Welcome back to the Defiant Spirit. I am back in action. I've taken a little time off over the summer, regrouping, have some really great strategic and business partners, and just a lot of great stuff going on. But I love to share insights around life, but around the Enneagram in particular. And so I thought just kind of do a podcast or a video on how you find your Enneagram type in a different way. So I love the Enneagram because it's all about your superpower, your why, your purpose. Other assessments out there are great, any MBTI and DISC and Strength Finders, but none of them deal with why you do what you do. The Enneagram is the only one. And so when you know what your why, as my teacher and mentor Viktor Frankl says, you can endure your how. Well, that's one way to sort of figure out your Enneagram type. You can really dig deep into what's my why, what's my purpose. And I have a program called Own Your Number, so you can check that out. You can dive in and you can figure out your type. I also offer an assessment, so if you want an assessment, get you that. But there's another way to do it, and it's a less sexy way, but I think it's infinitely, I don't want to say more valuable, but certainly infinitely valuable. And that is the opposite of your superpower would be your kryptonite. The opposite of your light would be your darkness or your shadow. Or the opposite of your wow, I love this Enneagram number is your ick factor. Now, a lot of people don't like the ick factors, especially certain types, but I'm just going to walk through all 9 ick factors. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again because it's worthy. It's also a good way to sort of understand who you're dealing with. If you can figure out their ick factor, if you know your ick factor, you can really navigate more consciously. Now, this is going to be a relatively brief video. I'll take you deeper into it and Own Your Number, the program, but the ick is what it sounds like. Not really rocket science, is it? Ick. I don't like the shadow side, the lower side. Remember, every Enneagram type has a high side, a healthy side. I call it the responsive, the responsible, able to choose your response side. The side that looks like when the higher side when we're living our truth, right? In our power, living fearlessly and on purpose. And then there's the reactive side, some call it the unhealthy side. I don't like unhealthy. It sounds, well, physiological and physical. It's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. It's the shadow side. It's the ick factor. And you know oftentimes when you're in your Enneagram type because the ick factor really feels like ick. A lot of these, for me, just don't really resonate. They don't bother me. I mean, I know I do them, I have them, but it's not my ick. I'll tell you my ick when I get to it. We're going to start with Enneagram 1. Enneagram 1 is sort of one of the easier ones to figure out the ick factor because we even changed the name, not me, but sort of the industry. It used to be called the Perfectionist, and that's the ick factor. Now it's called the Reformer. A lot of people still like the Perfectionist. Reformer is a little more affirmative versus pejorative, but whatever you call it, the ick factor is being a perfectionist, and that can cause so much tension in your life as a perfectionist, as a reformer, but in the lives of others. When you're with a reactive one, you can feel the demand, the criticism. That's a big part of the ick factor. The shoulds, right? They should all over everything, and you and themselves. Should. They have these impossible standards for themselves and for others that nobody can live up to. And so this perfectionism can really be crushing to their relationships, to themselves. And it's a big ick when they start looking at the shadows of their perfectionism. That's one way you can know that you're an Enneagram 1. Remember, you have all types in you. So some of these might, resonate, but not fully resonate. There's going to be one that's yours and yours alone. And the other ones start to factor in less and less. Enneagram 2, this is a delicate one. I know my 2s, the helper, the nurturer, the givers, they don't like their ick factor. In fact, they hate their ick factor more than any other type. Their ick factor we'll call manipulation. Now, manipulation comes in all kinds of forms. It can come in the form of pulling the strings, pretty obvious, especially when somebody's reactive. You can just feel when they're manipulating because they want to be in a relationship. They want to keep you nearby. I think of the extreme as that Stephen King movie when I forgot the name of it, but the woman hobbles the man. She doesn't want him to leave, so she crushes his ankles. That's an extreme form of manipulation, so he can't leave. I just blanked on the name of the movie. But anyways, it's usually a lot more subtle than that. It's more of a give to get. It can be something as sort of innocent as flattery. And twos don't like when you start pointing out that flattery might be a form of manipulation. It can be seduction. They can be sort of the femme fatale and really reel you in. It can be through overgiving, compensating your needs, taking care of your needs. So it's all kinds of ways, but start getting into the ick factor when you look at the give to get quality that reactive twos can get into. Again, responsible twos, amazing. Reactive, anything, not so amazing. Enneagram 3, the achiever. The achiever's ick factor, when they really start to look at themselves, self-deceit. They start fudging the truth. It doesn't mean they're outright liars, but threes can get themselves into trouble because remember, they're striving for achievement, victory, to get to the top of the mountain, and sometimes they'll step on toes, sometimes they'll crush skulls to get there. They can start justifying, rationalizing why they're doing what they're doing, and they get into this self-deceit, and it's a slippery slope with threes. When you start justifying mediocre behavior and then bad behavior and then horrible behavior, and you just slip down the slippery slope. You can end up in a very bad place if you don't check your self-deceit. The means doesn't always justify the ends. Enneagram 4, the ick factor this one's a harder one, but 4s are harder. The individualist, the romantic, the artist. The ick factor can be around sensitivity, a neediness. 2s and 4s can both do that, but a neediness around being understood and being special and being unique, and they can just really go down this path of sort of a drama and a suffering and causing suffering. And this one's really hard to describe, but if you're a 4, you know what I'm talking about, because you get into this place of just feeling like everybody has it better than you. Everybody's living their dream, but poor me. It's kind of a poor me. Ariella, my wife, and I get into a fight sometimes, and she'll call me the 8-hole at Enneagram 8, the challenger, and I'll call her the 4. I'll say, oh, for me, and then we laugh and move on, hopefully. So that one's hard, but you know it when you're in it. Enneagram 5, I would say there's not as much of an ick factor with 5s. They're a little desensitized to it. It can be around greediness, the investigator, the thinker. They can become really stingy in their resources. It can be money, but it also can be emotions and time, sort of doling out themselves to others very, well, again, in a stingy way. Withholding can become sort of miserly, and they know it when they're in it. They can withdraw, and you just know that you're an unhealthy or reactive 5 when you cut people off from you, when you spend too much time alone. And so again, another 4 and 5 are really hard to describe, but 5s are pretty easy to certainly know when you're around them, but I think 5s know who they are and what their ick factor is. And also sort of a greediness around knowledge, like they just can't get enough. Think of like Homeland, the TV show, and Carrie. She goes into that 5 place of just needing more and more and more information and just losing herself down this rabbit hole. Again, a hard one. 6, the ick factor is anxiety, starting to feel like they're really anxious, needing more and more security. They'll ask the same question, trying to get the same answer over and over and over again, and they can really work themselves into a frenzy. This is the loyalist. This is the loyal skeptic. They're navigating the world trying to find security and safety and solid ground, and so they can just become real neurotic. Now, an extreme example might be a Woody Allen or a Larry David, as I always share. Most of them are not quite this extreme, but the ick factor is just this insatiable quest for security and certainty in a world that's never fully certain or secure. Also, another piece of the ick factor for sixes can be projection. They'll project on other people what they're fearing. So oftentimes they'll push their partner or their friends away, accusing them of betrayal, not forgiving them for, betrayals that maybe weren't betrayals, but just were infractions or hurts. And so they can really look unhealthy, alienating themselves, a lot like five, but much more from a neurotic place. Enneagram 7, the enthusiast, I would say they don't like this. Twos and sevens might be the most sensitive to their ick factor. Sevens, the enthusiast, the optimist, the visionary, the fun ones, their ick factor comes when they're not being responsible. Irresponsibility. Peter Pan syndrome. They don't want to grow up. They're the boy or the girl that wants to live in Neverland. And they can just be flighty, jumpy, ADHD, squirrel, 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 the next thing, and not finishing what they started. And it makes them feel, when they're older, they can feel really bad about looking or being irresponsible, being shallow, not dealing with the darker, difficult aspects of life can be a real ick factor for sevens. Enneagram 8, the challenger. I don't know if it bothers me so much. I mean, it should bother me, and I don't want to do this, but the challenger, the boss, we're sort of the tough ones, or we pretend to be tough, and controlling. I become extremely controlling when I'm in fear, when I'm in reaction. And so I can become manipulative, but not like twos. I'm explicit, and I know it. Sort of pounce, step on you to get what I need, or control the situation, or bully. Yep, that's it. We can become bullies, and that's an extreme form of controlling. I'm not proud of it, but and the ick makes me want to stop and change it, but not all that sensitive to it, which is part of our problem as eights. Enneagram 9, the peacemaker. The ick factor is around just being weak, being meek, not wanting to cause conflict, not wanting to take up space. Nines really don't like when they're found out around that they're not really as agreeable as they're presenting. They're not really as nice as they're presenting. They are fearful of getting their needs met, of causing conflict. And so they can really play small, become meek or mousy. And, that's a pretty profound sense of ick. Now, again, none of these are who you are. You are here to defy your number. That doesn't mean you change your Enneagram number type. It just means that you start seeing the blind spots. You start seeing the shadows. You start facing them and going into them and illuminating them. And then it's no longer ick, or at least it's not so much of an ick that you can't deal with it. It's an ick like, yeah, I've dealt with that. I don't like that part about me. I choose to ascend, to defy my number, to live at the high side of my number, to be more responsible, able to respond, to choose my response. And so each of these types has, again, the highest of the heights and the lowest of the lows. And our work is to ascend out of the darkness, out of the ick, and to go out into the world and to, defy our number and live our spirit. And that is what it means to find your type through knowing what makes you say ick. I'll see you in the next video.